In Yomi Hustle, attacks have varying knockback, severity, direction, and hurt state that it causes. The severity of knockback will determine how far the opponent will be pushed and at what speed. The direction is self-explanatory, however there are attacks that can reverse the direction of knockback depending on how it hits the opponent. Hitting an attack applies either a grounded or aerial hurt state depending on if the opponent is on the ground or in the air. However, there are many attacks that will give grounded opponents the aerial hurt state, making them airborne. This is important because vertical DI input is ignored if the opponent is in a grounded hurt state, meaning that only horizontal DI can be applied in those situations. It's also important to note that as a part of their knockback, certain attacks can apply ground bounces, knockdowns and hard knockdowns, wall bounces and wall splats, all of which bring about their own DI considerations. DI stands for Directional Influence. It's a mechanic inspired by the Super Smash Bros. Series where it is used to adjust the direction and speed by which you are pushed around by your opponent's attacks. Its primary function is to give the comboed player some limited control over the match where they would otherwise have none. In order to use DI, click the circle above your action list and pull the dot around to adjust it. It will remain in the position it was last left in until changed. Pushing against knockback will slow you down while pushing with it will speed you up. Use the prediction system while adjusting DI in an effort to position yourself where it's the least advantageous for your opponent, but remember that you must lock in your input before the knockback is applied. There are a few factors that will adjust the effectiveness of DI, starting with an attack's DI modifier. Most attacks have a default modifier of 1.0, but there are exceptions with higher or lower values. As you continue to endure a combo, the strength of knockback as well as your DI will increase with each hit, with your DI scaling maxing out at 6 times normal strength. Long combos will also create a scaling force that pushes the players apart. The other component to DI is SDI, which stands for Smash Directional Influence, which gets its name from the Smash Bros. Series. It is also known as DI Nudge. When an attack applies hit stop, there is a slight nudge that occurs, which is also affected by your DI. Just as before, vertical DI won't be applied when in a grounded hurt state, and the strength of the push is affected by an attack's SDI modifier, which is normally defaulted to 1.0 but can be higher or lower. Increasing DI scaling during a combo will also increase the strength of SDI. When hitting your opponent, the only indicator of their DI is a very small arrow that appears briefly. It points in the same direction DI was applied but doesn't indicate its strength. It can prove difficult to see, especially if you're using the default hit spark, but you can go into the customization menu to change it to something else to improve its visibility. However, knowing which direction they're trying to move towards is information you'd want before hitting them, not afterwards. Move your opponent's DI circle while using the prediction system to get a view of how they may apply DI, keeping in mind that their chosen input might be completely different. Now I'll show you some examples of how to apply DI. If you are caught by the robot's try-catch, it can be used 3 times in a row if you're not pushing away with DI. If you're pushing all the way in the opposite direction, try-catch only hits once. Pushing away with DI is a good default direction to use if you're not sure, as most attacks will push the victim away from the attacker. Normally this will force the attacker to use non-optimal attacks that can reach or spend resources to stay in range. In the best case scenario, the combo drops altogether. Airborne hit stun is interrupted when the victim touches the ground. In this example, Mana Strike will earn the wizard a plus 30 frame advantage, giving enough time to catch up in combo. But if the ninja points DI straight down, it will interrupt the hit stun and the wizard will only have a plus 10 frame advantage, which won't be enough to catch up in combo with. It is important to note that some moves cause a knockdown when the victim touches the ground. This can interrupt combos, especially against the cowboy, but there are situations where the opponents benefit instead. In this example, the ninja has knocked down the cowboy and is using Stomp because it can hit a downed opponent. The cowboy points DI upwards and as a result is launched high into the air. As the ninja chases, the cowboy maintains this DI and with each hit is pushed higher upwards, forcing the ninja to spend air options to continue. When the air options run out, the ninja loses the means to pursue and has no choice but to return to the ground. Every character has a means to force their opponent downwards during an air combo, but if you see it coming, you can point the DI straight down, and in some situations it can make it impossible for the attacker to catch up with the downward speed. Pushing towards an opponent can make sense when you're being forced into a bad position, like the corner or towards hazards. This is unlikely to free you, but can be worth doing if it prevents the combo from being much stronger. If you're already in a corner, you can push upwards if you're airborne, but if your opponent is keeping you grounded, pushing towards them can get you out. At close range, pushing towards the opponent can make it awkward for combos, as many attacks are designed to hit someone from farther away, and will miss when too close. This might force the attacker to use suboptimal attacks to push you away. When choosing an action during neutral, consider what attacks can hit you even if you don't think they'll choose those options. Using DI is always free, so adjust it for the worst possible scenarios in case things don't go as planned. This will help minimize your losses if you end up losing neutral. While you are being comboed, you should be adjusting your DI every time you are hit. Try to anticipate which attack will come next and set your DI accordingly. The optimal direction will depend a lot on the situation, but it's often beneficial to just push in the same direction of the knockback to spike your velocity and force your opponent to chase after you. To master the art of DI, you'll need experience and game knowledge, which means your only move is learn.